you need to grow to the point where you have to hire people, and then you keep going, but you need to replace yourself as you move along. The biggest thing that makes you good at problem solving is having more problems to solve. When I went to the Trump rally down in Costa Mesa, we were again on the outside, but that one, the counter protesting at that one was, it's probably one of my favorite stories to tell. Is and the day ended well, but it was one of those.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Infinite Icons. Today we are sitting down with Jonathan Wojtanowicz, a seasoned strategist whose experience ranges from the presidential election campaigns to high-profile security operations. Known for his smart problem-solving skills, he comes with a unique blend of strategic thinking and practical execution to every challenge. So stay tuned and get some amazing strategies that you could use it. So, and if you already haven't subscribed to the channel, this is the perfect time to hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. Let's begin. Hello, Jonathan. Welcome to Infinite Icons.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's so wonderful to have you. So, which part of California are you joining us from?
Southern California, down in Orange County.
Orange County. Very nice to see you. So please go ahead, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your company.
Okay, so currently I'm the president of Systematic Inquiry Group. We're a family-owned, veteran-operated security and investigations company based in Southern California. My dad started it back in 1993, and I officially came on in around 2019, and we opened up our service offerings to include security, which is kind of more of my background. And, I grew up in Southern California, joined the Marine Corps straight out of high school, kind of in response to 9/11. That kind of stuck with me, and I wanted to be involved in something that was going to fight against the people that did that. And got out, worked with my dad for a little bit, got my private investigator's license, and then ended up moving off into the security industry, where I worked as a freelance bodyguard for about 6-7 years before I came back to the company.
Got it. Thank you. So to kick it off, how was it to be in the Marine Corps right after your high school? How was your experience there?
It was a good one overall. I definitely, if I had to go back, I would still do it again. I might take it a little bit more seriously. I was young and, still had a lot of maturing to do, which that helped. But it was a really good experience overall. It taught a lot of things, teamwork, troop welfare, which is, looking out for the guys on your team first, especially if you're a leader. Your Marines come before you do. So you take care of your guys before, if there's not enough food, they eat and you don't, that kind of concept. And knowing that when you take care of your team takes care of you, and they do a better job as well. And that's a really big principle that I carried with me, into the business world and the private sector once I got there, and noticed that was something that's missing oftentimes, because they look at people as assets, not as people, and how they can be best utilized for profit and company benefit. And not that I'm a nonprofit business, but everybody can win, and you don't have to step on people necessarily to do that. So that was big. Got to see combat a few times. I did a couple deployments to Afghanistan. Really proud of being able to do that and go there and come back with all my limbs and everything as well, which is good. And the special relationships that I made there. And and also realizing all the freedom that we do have and enjoy, and what it costs, and what other people in other places don't have that we do enjoy. It definitely puts a fresh perspective on the freedoms and things that we do enjoy in the United States that you take for granted very often, because you don't realize how not that far away people don't have those sorts of things. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for everything you do and keeping us safe and free, as you said. That's very, very valuable.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much. Yeah. So you said your father founded the company in way back 1993. So the ground is already well set, and in fact, a pretty solid one too. So when you entered, what were your challenges and also your advantages when you stepped in?
Sure. So I'll start with the advantages. I guess I had always wanted to start my own company. I actually did a couple years prior to joining the company. I started a training company, and that really took off. I was teaching situational awareness primarily, and I ended up creating a few more courses. They were all based off of things and skills that I'd learned in the Marine Corps and in the security industry that really kept me a step ahead with everything I was dealing with and the people I was working with, both on the team and the public. And it was great. It was working really well, and then COVID kind of hit and kind of destroyed all the work that I'd put in. And it was just because nobody wanted to meet anymore, and it was all in-person training. So, which I still am a firm believer that the best training is in-person training. You can talk remotely like we are over Zoom or Google Meet or whatever platform you're using, but the vast majority of human communication is nonverbal. Even your most conservative estimates are going to be 60 to 70%, which means that most of what I'm saying right now isn't actually coming out of my mouth. And you miss a lot of that on the remote side, especially from the speaker to the audience, because you can't see the audience. You can't read how their body language, how they're sitting, that they're getting up and walking out, those sorts of things. And it really helps you communicate better when you recognize, what's working and what's not working, so you can adjust. And so I digress a little bit on that and kind of got off a little tangent. But the point being, I ended up pivoting back into the security industry and worked for a little while, and then came on with my dad, who made me an offer because I wanted to start my own security company. He said, well, why don't you just start with me? You can go get the license, and he had some of the business infrastructure set up, so I wouldn't have to start all over with all. So was able to do that and come on. And we started off slow with kind of one client and some little work here and there. And the advantages are really just having the stability and having a salary, a lot of the things that a brand new entrepreneur wouldn't have, that base to rely or fall back on. A lot of times when you decide to jump in and be an entrepreneur, it's an all-in thing. You're quitting your career, all your eggs are in one basket. It has to work, or you're not going to be able to pay the rent. So, which really yields a lot of success as well. There's all sorts of sayings out there, burn the boats and things like that, where, you decide that this is it, it's all or nothing. And because of that, you work and focus like your life depends on it, because it does. So
it does.
So I didn't have to be in that, fight or flight mindset where it was life or death every day. And the challenges are probably, a lot of them more are learning new things. That's probably the biggest challenge is starting a new business. Although we weren't technically a new business, we were starting a new service that neither of us had really ever sold, and neither of us had ever operated a company with a bunch of W-2 employees. So he had operated the company with a group of subcontractors. So, you're not dealing with workers' comp, you're not dealing with payroll taxes, a lot of additional costs that we'd never had before. And now we didn't just have them, we had them, and they were big, like really big. we have, first we had payrolls of a couple thousand, and then we acquired a company, and that ended up changing to 30,000, 40,000, and that's not including the payroll taxes and the work comp costs and all this other stuff. And then you get a claim, and then that goes up, and then you got to pay a settlement out, and everything just kind of snowballed and got bigger and bigger. And learning how to navigate these areas where I had little to no knowledge on was definitely the most challenging part of starting and growing a business. And then knowing what to focus on. I think that's really hard to put your time in the right places. As the business grows, you have less and less discretionary time, which is, time that I can decide what to do with.
Right.
A lot of your time is dictated to you. These tasks have to be done, and some of them are time bound. You have set meetings, and that time's just gone. You don't get it back. So the discretionary time is where you choose what you do, and what you do with that time really impacts your business if you're not focusing on the right things. So a thing that I learned earlier on when we had a business coach that we were working with was to literally plan your day each and every day. First 15 minutes of every day, you're lining out all of your tasks, and you prioritize them, and you execute them in that order. And inevitably, I have probably anywhere between 20 and 50 tasks to accomplish in a given day, and I almost never get them all done. So,
yeah.
And that list grows. So what can wait, what has to be done now, and what's going to have the most impact, and being able to prioritize those, and 15 minutes of planning, saves you an hour, or more.
So true.
I think it's like a 4-to-1 return, basically. So for every minute you plan, you save, 3 minutes of wasted time, 3 or 4 minutes of wasted time. So it's time well invested. And it allows you to not just jump on the things that are urgent but not important. And you focus on the important things that are. I love that quote. I forget who says it, but it goes, what's urgent is often not important, and what is important is often not urgent. So focusing on those most important things that usually aren't screaming at you, but they'll make a world of difference in a week or two if they get done. So
that's the tricky part, isn't it? You got to choose what is really important and what you really need to focus first, and then the not so important, but it feels like it has that big persona. So yeah, it's always tricky.
Very much, and it's a daily battle. Deciding what's important, what's not important, and then what you can eliminate. That's another big one too. It's like what doesn't need to be done at all. And
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I need to spend less time doing this and more time doing that. You're constantly, you're like fine tuning an engine, every day and getting the most out of it.
Right. So I understand you branched out on your own, though you're part of the parent company. You branched out, and what changed? What about your responsibilities there? What actually happened?
What changed? Yeah, a lot of things. So I was managing. My background was in the Marine Corps, in the infantry, and then I came and I got my private investigator's license, and then I went off and, worked in bodyguarding and security. And I managed teams. I managed an estate. We had a bunch of guys around the clock, multiple locations. I was assistant manager with a friend of mine, and there was a lot of people, a lot of man hours, but it was all operations focused. So I came into this really good on the operations side. You think of it like a branch manager or a GM at a branch of any type of company. They run the operation, but on the back end, I didn't really have any knowledge on on pricing, on sales, on networking, on selling what I do. Like, I don't sell it, I do it. I am
right.
But selling a service, you could take the best mechanic in the world, but now you turn around and say, okay, you're the best mechanic in the world. Now you have to go sell what you do to people. And that's totally different because you're not used to communicating to people that don't know what you're talking about, explaining it in a way that they can understand it and understand value. You have to reverse engineer what you do to the client, and in a way of saying, what problem do you solve, not what do you do, and communicate it in that manner. And that takes some work, and you got to sit there and think, well, what problem do I solve? And what is it? Why do people hire me? And it's always the client's reason. That's they say the client's always right. Well, that's because everyone's reason is different, and a lot of them fall into categories, but your reason is your reason. I remember one client that we worked with. We were brought on because there were some break-ins and burglaries and home invasions in that area, and so they wanted to have security because of that. And then quickly, when there were issues with the team at the residence, the issues always revolved around the whereabouts of the children and the mom not knowing whether they had arrived or left or when they got home the night before. And I quickly understood that the reason we came in was not the reason why we stayed. So the reason why we were there was so that mom would know when her babies got home. That was the most important thing to them. So if we missed one of them coming home and didn't update that on the report, and she wakes up and thinks that her kid's not home and has to go figure that out, that became a major issue. So her knowing the whereabouts of her kids was the reason. That's the reason we were there. And once I identified that, I regularly recommunicated that to the team. I said, just know that we are there to be eyes on her kids. Like, that is the entire purpose, and that's what's going to keep your job, and that's what's going to get you fired if you don't miss it. And you have to discover that, and that's probably one of the most fun things about what I do now when I have new client meetings. It's discovering why they need help, why they think they need help, and then what's the impact that that's actually having on them. Because a lot of times you go to buy something, you go to hire someone, you really don't actually know the true reason. You know the symptom, like the the toilet's leaking, right? So I know that's a problem that needs to be fixed. But why is it a problem? Well, because if it continues to leak, it's going to ruin the floor. If it ruins the floor, I'm going to have to do this. So it's like, what would it really cost you if you didn't do anything? Well, I'd have to remodel the whole bathroom. That would cost $10,000, right? So then if I can walk through that and I'm the plumber, I say, okay, so $300 to fix the leak, does that make sense? Is that worth investing in? It's like, well, 300, 10,000, it's like, okay,
oh yeah,
that's a no-brainer. And sometimes you can't equate it in dollars. Sometimes it's that easy, but sometimes it's an emotion. I don't want to be afraid to go to sleep every day. And if you can give peace of mind, that's worth something too. So finding that is a lot of fun. I enjoy that part.
Oh, high value, actually. Yeah, peace of mind, and yeah, you cannot put a price on that. Right. Oh, presidential election campaigns. That must be really big. Please tell us more about it.
Yeah, we're working with the media crews covering some of those. I did during, I think it was it was Trump versus Hillary, and I think the first campaign he ran. And I worked for a news crew covering one of Hillary's events, and that one was kind of uneventful. We were more on the outside. It was interesting just hearing the news crews just speculate on what would or wouldn't happen in the election, and it was inside a school. They shut it down. Wasn't a whole lot of action when I went to the Trump rally down in Costa Mesa. We were again on the outside, but that one, the counter protesting at that one was significant. There were hundreds and hundreds of people out, you know, that had all sorts of different flags and organizations out there protesting Trump and pro-Trump supporters, and they were all out there, lined up almost on battle lines, yelling at each other and arguing back and forth, and then as the day moved on, it turned on to a full-on riot where they flipped cop cars and were destroying things. You could see the police moving in. They brought in mounted police as well, and it was chaotic. Trying to keep my news crew safe and moving with them. They didn't want to leave, and it's like, well, you see them lining up, like it's time to go. You don't want to get caught. You don't want to get caught in that. That was a really unique experience. Definitely hadn't done anything that bad since. Until I worked with some news crews covering the Black Lives Matter protests as well, and that was similar, where we got in some hairy situations where things were, getting bad at the end of the night, and but we got out of there just in time.
Oh, good. That's nice. So no one hurt, no one harmed.
No,
so that's good.
got everybody out. We didn't have any issues with that. But it's amazing the perceptions that people have about different stuff, and how we often just make assumptions, at face value on, either thinking poorly or thinking well of someone. And I remember some of the Black Lives Matter protests, the people were really upset at the news crews for being out there, and the reporter was angry because they were yelling at him and everything, and he's like, I'm here trying to cover your story. It's like, don't you want to, you're protesting to get your opinion out, and if somebody has a camera and a microphone to broadcast what you're saying, you would think that they would like that opportunity, but they didn't like that, and he didn't either. So but they just thought that the news was bad, I suppose, which I get. It's definitely that element there, that depending on what side of the political aisle you're on, different news stations cater to one side or another, and that's definitely true. Yeah, so true. I agree. Yeah. Any mentionable incidents with any of those high profile people? Sure. It's probably one of my favorite stories to tell is, so we worked at a celebrity estate, and both Mr. and Mrs. were both A-list high profile celebrities in their own right prior to being married. And we were in charge of their home and security for their home. And sometimes I would go out with the kids as well, to look out for them while they were out, which is one of the more fun things to do too. I love working with kids. I'm the eldest of 5 kids, and it's just always fun. You do fun things, and they have to be in bed at a reasonable hour, which is nice. They can't stay out till 2 a.m, partying. So you got a good end time, and that's nice to count on as well when you're working with the kids. So,
So true. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a celebrity or not. Bedtime is bedtime for everybody.
So we're working at their house, and there's a show and tell at school. So Dad takes one of the kids to school along with the hamster. So they go to school, they come back, and he comes back in an Uber. He didn't come back in his car. And he goes inside. Mrs. comes out to the command center of the house and asks the manager, where's the hamster? And I said, well, he left this morning. When he took your daughter to school, he brought it with him. So, okay, so she goes back inside. Then he comes out the front door and goes to the agent at the front gate and proceeds to ask him where his car is. And
Oh my.
the gate agent tells him, I'm not sure, sir. You left with it this morning. And so he goes back inside, and I get a call from the manager and tells me, yeah, we gotta find this hamster because it's in the car and we don't know where the car is. And I'm like, okay. So I knew that he had an apartment nearby, and odds are that his car was going to be there. That was my first and best guess. If it wasn't there, we were in big trouble. So I went there, found the car. It was there. Found the hamster in the back seat. He was still alive. Brought him back to the house. I got my hamster rescue badge and brought him safe and sound back into the kids' room, and and the day ended well. But it was one of those things that, I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. I mean, reality is so much more interesting, and it's things like that I tell people, because there's a lot of process and procedure and things and that you put into working at these estates. So there's ways of doing things. If this happens, you respond in this way. But there's always things that fall outside of everything you've prepared for, like this. It's like, where's my kid's hamster? I don't know.
Right.
Find it. And those are the sorts of things that you just have to be able to think on your feet and solve the problem. And we did stuff like that every day at that residence. It was always something. And it's rewarding when you get it done as well. And that was probably what I liked most about that, because it was challenging every day, but you never knew what was going to happen.
No, that was something. That really was something. And the hamster skipped school that day, I'm sure. Stayed back in the car. Okay, so you were, talking about problem solving. You have been doing it all through for your work and otherwise. So what about the regular people, and especially entrepreneurs? How can we develop or sharpen our problem solving skills? The usual scenarios would be, say, a shortage of staff, money, time crunch, and frequent changes in plans from the client. So you actually have to be really quick in your thoughts, and it's a problem. So how do you think we can handle that?
Yeah, well, with any problem, the first thing you want to look at is, what resources do I have available to me right now? And often, when you're in the field and security, you're alone a lot of times, or you have one or two other guys. You have very limited resources, and you have to work with what's available to you. And one of the things that sets guys apart in the industry is being able to recruit people to your cause. And you use the valet to help you with something, or the attendant to check a bag that wouldn't otherwise happen, or things like that, to increase your resources by being able to communicate effectively with other people. But really, it's like, what do I have right now that I can bring to bear on this problem? And is it enough? Can I find a way to solve it with what I have? Sometimes you can't, as well. And if you have time, is this really the problem? Is always a good question to ask. Like, yeah, I have a shortage of employees. Okay, is that really the problem though, or is it the way that I talk to people? They all want to quit all the time. If you can dig deeper to the root cause of what it is versus solving the symptoms, you solve the problem as a whole. So I actually had this occur the other day. I was talking to my vice president in Northern California, and he told me, what was he telling me? Something about, it was about shifts. He had forgotten, we got a really big job that came in, covering a company who was experiencing a strike from their Teamsters union. So a bunch of people blocking their trucks from leaving the location, and impeding work. So he had staffed this thing. He'd done a great job getting it all together, getting all the guys communicating, covering all the shifts. But what he failed to do was put their pay rate on their shifts. So when I went to go process payroll, like, I had no idea what to pay these guys. So I said, hey, what are you paying these guys? I need to know. So we get them paid properly. And it's like, oh, this, they get paid this amount. And I said, okay, that's great. He's like, oh, so you could just put that in? I said, yeah, I can, but I'd like to solve this permanently. So the problem was missing pay here, but the real issue was there was no like payroll job template for that pay rate that existed. So I said, what I'd like you to do is go and create a job profile that pays at this rate, so that you can reuse this later on, and this will never happen again. And also, he could put it on all the guys that had future scheduled shifts, so this would never occur again. And so that's what we ended up doing. So that's a good real world example of that. It's like, the problem, that wasn't really the problem. The problem was we hadn't created something to solve this permanently. Although we could put a Band-Aid on it and I could do a one-time thing, but it's like, this is probably going to happen again. So we want to prevent future problems too. So is the problem really the problem? This is a really good one. If you have time to delay the decision, that's always a good thing to do, because more information can become available later that may totally change everything. Like, we don't need to do anything at all, or just you can totally turn you around, like COVID happening or something. It's like, we're worried about employees, and then COVID happens. It's like, well, we're actually laying off all our employees, so it doesn't matter. Totally, something like that totally changes the whole landscape of your company or environment. But the biggest thing that makes you good at problem solving is having more problems to solve. And I remember there's so many people out there that'll tell you, if I want to do 20 pull-ups, there's 50 different programs you can do, right? And I was always really good at that, but I started at it when I was a young age before I went into the Marine Corps. But I only did one thing preparing for that. I did pull-ups. I did pull-ups every day. And so when everybody asked me, it's like, well, what do I do? I was like, you do pull-ups. you do it, and you do what you can. You don't start at 30. You don't start at 20. You start at sometimes not even 1. You get halfway up. But you build on that. You do it consistently, and eventually you grow, and you're able to do 1. You're able to do 2, and that grows to 4 and 5. And so I can't remember his name. He's the CEO of NVIDIA. And he said, what's the single, greatest factor in building resilience in somebody? And he said, well, it's suffering. And he's like, it's something that I wish all of my employees every day. I wish suffering on you. And it's not to the effect of, losing your family or things like that, but nothing builds that toughness, that ability to get back up after you've been knocked down than getting knocked down and doing it. So I think, putting yourself in difficult situations, not to where your business is in danger, but, get used to being uncomfortable and attack those things head on. And you get better as you do it. It's a lot of experiential things, but of course there's education and things out there that you can do to get yourself, stay ahead of the trouble and the problems. You win 100% of the fights you're not in. So if you don't have to be in that arena and risk getting hurt, don't. If you could learn something today that's going to save you down the road, that's great. A lot of these things that you don't foresee, and that's why it's a problem. It's because you didn't
so
plan.
True, yeah.
But taking a step back, letting the emotions subside is another big one. That's one that I have a hard time with. Sometimes you get fired up on something or upset by someone, and you want to make a quick decision, and that's usually not the right time to make a decision. You got to let those emotions subside so you can make a rational choice instead of a emotional choice on something. And think about the consequences. So I guess problem solving more or less is, what resources do you have available? What is the actual problem? It's not necessarily the thing that you're staring at right now. What is it deeper? Is it a root problem, or is it just a one-time thing? And then if you can take time to research or learn more about the problem, or see if it is a problem. So we had I'll get another story. So we had is that actually the job I was just talking about. So before that job happened, we got a call from this company that needed help, and they needed a whole bunch of guys for a long time. And so we're like, okay, we'll get it together. We got a service agreement signed. Service agreement had in it a cancellation fee. And we had this whole thing staffed, and then he called and said, yeah, we're not going to do it tomorrow. I said, okay, no problem, but you do owe us the fee. And he responded and said, well, I signed it in good faith, which those words don't actually make sense. So I'm thinking, so what you meant was I didn't mean it when I signed on the line. And how am I supposed to take that? You're not a man of your word, like that. And that was really upsetting. And my dad was furious. And he came and brought it to me. I was like, what do we do with this? And we went back and forth a little bit, and we were very upset. We were insulted, this was our first business dealing with this guy. And it's like, well, is this how it's going to be? And And he turned around and said, we'd like to get another quote for this going forward if you can align with us. Basically, if you get in line and do it the way I want and forget that I owe you money, even though I do, then we can keep going forward. So it's like, oh, that was a tough pill to take. It's like, oh man, are we gonna take this? We're gonna let this happen? I said, you know what? I said, we are right. We have the contract, we have all these things, but we also have this opportunity here that probably will materialize if we can swallow our pride and let it go. So we ended up just letting it go and saying, hey, sure, we'll get you something else. We'll let this one go this time. And it blew up. It went from being a couple day thing to a 9-day thing. It's still going now, may go a whole month. It's going to be, if it runs the duration and not including, they want help in another state, which might start too. So even if that doesn't happen, we'll probably do an entire month's worth of revenue company-wide just with that one job.
Oh.
So I could have been upset, held them to it, and stuck to my pride and maybe made a couple $1,000s, but lost that relationship long term. Or had to go to court and maybe not get anything too, is also a possibility. But we chose not to do that, and now we have a good relationship, and we're getting connected with other companies in Florida, and that was tough. But not making that quick emotional decision ended up paying at least $30,000 so far. So it's hard not to do that, especially when people insult you or do things like that. And
right.
But you got to realize that it's business, and so you got to take your emotions out of that. And it's like, well, what's better for the business isn't what's better for my pride all the time.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's always a fine line between yourself and your business.
Right. And you're very much intermingled, but it's hard to do that. But it obviously paid out in this instance, and I've had to navigate that. Even just dealing with guys on the team that I get frustrated on something, and I like hate it when I can't reach my guys. When they're in the field and they're working, it's like if I'm reaching out to you, it's important. It's like, why are you not available? And what's more important is always what's on my mind. What's more important than me calling you? And it better be good. And but I called this one guy because he sent me an email, and I never communicate something important over email. If you have another option, do it over the phone, do it on a Zoom call, because everybody always reads it the way they think the other person is talking, not the way
right.
they're talking. So you may say, thank you very much for a wonderful time today, or thanks a lot, and or you could say thanks a lot, and it's
right.
like same thing, totally different way. One person meant it, one person did not mean it. And so this guy sent me this message, and it was in regard to sick time, but the way he asked it was just the words. He's like, you didn't get back to me, you didn't do this, why didn't you pay me? And I'm like, I'm getting upset reading it. And so I decided to call him right away, which is the first bad idea I had. And I called him intending to tell him, hey, when you say these things, that really gets me upset. And I'm feeling this way. And this guy has always been pretty disrespectful He's got a bit of a track record. But he answered the phone, and this was really probably just God taking it easy on me. He was the nicest I'd ever heard him in all the times I talked to him. He was like, "Oh, hey, how are you?"
Oh,
I was totally taken back by the way he talked to me, totally disarmed me. And again, I decided I'm not even going to address it. I'm going to tell him I solved the problem. Your sick pay's coming through. It got missed. It'll be paid out on Monday. How are you doing? I know you had gotten that car accident. I want to make sure you're okay. And yeah, ended up being a really good phone call instead of a confrontation, which is what it was gonna be when I started the call. So, but I chose not to address it because it's like it's not really an issue now, because of the way that he spoke to me and those things. And it's like, do I really need to bring this up? It's like, not really. No, I don't need to address it.
got it. Yeah, there is such a big difference from, as you said, a phone call and a text message or email, and best is face to face. That's the best way. Yeah, especially in such scenarios, it is like, yeah, that's a cool thing. So, how does it work being a scheduled, disciplined person versus being spontaneous? Because I assume you need to have both. How do you balance the both?
Yeah, I think I try to front load my weeks with the admin stuff, whatever has to be done. You also prioritize in your weekdays. So, Monday should be all your A tasks, A, B, C, A, B, C, D, and E. So A, B, and C task, and then D task is delegate. So things you can give to other people, and then E tasks are things that should be eliminated. So there should always be looking to put things in all those categories. What has to be done. It's high impact. High time bound, and then B and C are lesser important. But I love to I do D first. What can I give to somebody else? And the reason why D has to come first is because they can't start until I give it to them. So I got to give it to them in order for it to start. Then I can move to my A task. So my A task is really delegating all the tasks that I can first, and then moving to my A level tasks, and eliminating or moving forward the ones that can wait, and so I can focus on the important ones.
Yeah, I mean, prioritizing is so crucial.
But being spontaneous,
Yes.
I think there's discretionary time always. I usually don't have everything totally booked out. There's some open time in between where I can handle stuff or shift gears on things. And then I try to keep Friday pretty light. And if I can, I don't have anything there. That way it's kind of a spillover day, or a day where I can just do things that pop up that can kind of move there. It's kind of like a fail safe. So everything's done Monday through Thursday pretty much. And then if anything spills over, I have something to spill over, because if I didn't do that, it spills over into the weekend, which is family time, and I can't have that. So
yeah,
a buffer.
Friday is kind of a buffer day.
Yeah. And then if I did everything great, I get a reward and I don't have to work Friday. So
right,
that's great too.
Right. I remember the other day when we were chatting, you were mentioning about, you did your time and your grill, and then now you get to, do the not so hectic work yourself. So, yeah, please tell us a little bit, because our audience are the newcomers, new business owners who are still in that grind. So please, give us that assurance that this is going to be all settled.
Yeah, I mean, I think I went to a conference recently about scaling. A lot of us get stuck in the owner operator position where no one cares about your business more than you do, right? And that's never really going to change. However, if you don't allow other people and teach other people to fill the roles that you currently hold, you can grow your business as much as you want, but all that that's going to accomplish is increasing the work hours you put in every week. So until you're able to delegate tasks that you do to other people and make less money for that too, by the way, this is a, we can give a, for instance, I could charge $50 an hour for something. If I go and work it, all that money comes to me, right? Or I could hire someone to do that, and they may make $30 an hour. That's not including payroll taxes, so let's throw on another $3. So I got to pay Uncle Sam to pay them. It's a wonderful setup they have there. So then I bring home, theoretically, $17 versus $50. However, I've also freed up an hour of my time. So there's a transfer of assets there. I exchange money for my time back, but it also allows me to take on more work. So obviously you're going to have 4 guys working 1 hour in order to make $50 of profit. However, I could continue to do that because my scalability doesn't change based on me. I become the limiting factor. So I can only work so many hours in a day. And so I need other people to go work those jobs that I otherwise couldn't and make money that I wouldn't have otherwise. So there is a point where there's kind of a shift, and you might make a little bit less money for a time while you're growing the business back. But what it will do is you start to shrink your responsibilities, and it allows you to focus on the scaling or growth side and not so much in the operation itself. And teaching people to take stuff on becomes a bigger focus of, mentoring, growing, and having them cover those tasks. And there's still certain ones that you're not going to want to give up for a little while. But find the things that you love to do and just do those ones, and there's ones you have to do in the beginning, of course, because you're a one-man band or you only have 2 employees. But you need to grow to the point where you have to hire people, and then you keep going, but you need to replace yourself as you move along. And I put in a ton of hours in the beginning, and that wasn't for my own business either. It was just working for other companies. I'd work 60, 80 hours a week. That's a lot, and that's not sustainable forever, especially with the family. But you have to work smart. You have to work with the end in mind. Stephen Covey, thinking about that. You have to envision the future, and then you have to form a plan to get there. So a goal without a plan is a dream. It stays there. It's not going to turn into anything. So you need to have a plan to get there, plan some baby steps, walk towards it, always be learning. And I think those dollars for hours is the first step. And it's one that is not great, because it's like, well, then I make less money. It's like, that's true, but you're at your cap already. So you're never going to make any more money now, unless you want to work 120 hours a week, which you could do. But, I'd rather work the 80 and hire another guy to work those extra 40 and make less money. But in the end, you're not putting in more hours, and then you hire another guy. He works another 40, and then maybe you get to come back to 60 hours a week, and then you slowly kind of cut your time and move it in that direction. And knowing your numbers, what you can pay people, is everything on that side. You really have to have a good grasp of costs of goods and services versus what you're charging, and that's not it. You also have to know your below the line costs, which is all the stuff that it costs to run the business aside from the labor and materials. So, what's rent, what's electricity, what are all the, the work comp, all these other things that really pile up. And which is why so many people have moved more remote, because it eliminates a lot of those costs, because they're kind of irrelevant now in a lot of businesses. So less and less brick and mortar establishments out there, because they realized through COVID that they didn't need the office as much, and that's huge overhead. So yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, the brick and mortar, it's a huge thing actually. A major chunk of a company's expenses.
yeah, big time. If you could find a way to sublease or share something with somebody, that's another good way of doing that. Or something I learned too in the last 5-6 years is bartering is still alive and well. You don't hear about it. You don't. It's not advertised, but we've done a lot of that with clients, with other companies that we work with. We just exchange resources. We'll do this for you if you do that, and no money's exchanged in a lot of these things. So yeah, think outside the box with stuff too.
Right. That was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing so many tips. So, in case somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Sure, you can hit me up on my email. It'll be my first name, Jonathan, at systematicinquiry.com. I answer my own email still for now, so you'll hit me directly. And or check us out on our website, systematicinquiry.com. Email is a great way to reach me, though.
Excellent. Fantastic. So now we hit the fast 5 questions for those short and witty answers.
Okay.
Right. What's your favorite free time activity?
Free time activity would definitely be spending time with family. That's definitely my favorite. I got a little daughter at home, and so all the extra hours are with her, hanging out. And,
That's the best.
Now we're in the pool a lot because it's summertime, out in the water.
Nice. What is it one thing that people do not know about you?
I've been to probably 3 or 4 countries outside the U.S. that they all assumed I was a national and would speak the language to me. I don't speak any other languages other than English, so I didn't do anything. I went to Romania, went to Mexico, and everybody thought I was Romanian or Mexican. I'm neither, but
maybe you blend in very well.
I did. Apparently, I got enough mixture of European in me to fit in all over, I suppose.
Good for your job also. That's nice.
Yeah.
What are you working on as an entrepreneur?
What am I working on? Right now, probably my biggest thing that I'm working on is learning to be a better salesman, and that's my least favorite thing to do because I'm an introvert. I'm starting to find the fun in it on some of it, kind of problem solving. I kind of talked a little bit about it earlier. Finding what is the actual issue that they're facing that they're trying to solve with us, and that's started to become more fun. But I don't like going out. I've done a lot of networking events and things like that, and those are always tough for me because it's a room full of new people that I don't know. So it's a little overwhelming sometimes. I'm able to get over it because I've done it for a few years, and I know what to say and how to interact now, and kind of push my nerves down a little bit. But being able to get to people's problems, I think, because I'm a problem solver, my first inclination is to immediately say, "Great, we can solve it. This is how we do it. Let's go." And a lot of times you end up talking yourself out of work because you tell them how to solve their problem and they don't need to hire. And a lot of times, because we're not, I'm not selling pencils. It's not cheap to bring us into things. So if people don't really understand the value of their problem and the cost of doing nothing, maybe, they're never gonna use it. Like, oh, that's too expensive. It's like, because one of the red flags right away whenever I talk to anybody is like, well, what are your rates? Before you even tell me anything. It's like, so you don't care at all about me. You just want to know if we fit within your budget, which I'm not saying budget's not important, but if I don't understand your issue, then you don't understand how much value your issue is. So if you're only valuing what you think is important, which is the price, versus what the actual problem is or thing you're protecting. So
what's the best advice you've ever received?
Oh man, there's probably a couple. One that comes to mind right away is not all money is good money, and that concept is basically, you can make money doing a lot of different things. You can make more money or less money, but it's not always a good thing. Making more money is not always a good thing, because what else does it cost you? And that lesson really came home for me. I was up in Northern California working up at Facebook campus, but I was gone, and it was really wearing on my wife and I, and I ended up leaving the detail because it was putting way too much stress on our relationship. And I had an old guy that I was working with. I was kind of telling him what was going on, and that was just his one-liner. It's like, not all money is good money. And it was like, okay, I get it, and acted on it. So that's a really good one.
Good one, yeah. Yeah, pretty deep meaning to it.
Yes, very much so.
Very much, yeah. So one word to describe you?
One word to describe me. Ooh, probably say resilient. Would probably be one for me.
Fantastic. That was very clever. Wonderful. I really enjoyed this whole conversation, and there is so much of takeaways from this. And thank you so much for your time and sharing your experiences with us. And as I said earlier, before this recording, all your experiences reminds me of a movie, and definitely nothing short of a movie scene. So it was fun talking to you and learning so much about the strategies and problem solving and how important they are. Thanks so much, Jonathan. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.